Welcome to another CEO/founder wisdom pod with Ashutosh Garg. He is founder at the brand called You and Guardian Pharmacy. He's the author of multiple books, and I'm excited to have the conversation we're going to have today. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start or scale a podcast, can be the most valuable thing that one can do in 2023 and 2024. I believe that podcasts are great to learn, to connect with new people, and even to get new leads, grow community, and get clients. So if you need help with that, podbuyer.com. Ashu, can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about the brand called You?
Okay, so my own background, Charles, thank you for inviting me to speak to you. My own background, after business school, 17 years with India Tobacco, then 8 years running aerospace for two large American aerospace companies, and then became an entrepreneur, founded India's second largest chain of pharmacies, exited from the business. I started a brand called You 4.5 years ago with the objective of giving back. And today I do believe we are the largest platform in the world with over 2,100 recordings from 65 countries and a very, very large viewership. So I do talk to people across multiple segments, ranging from startups and entrepreneurs to supply chains, to branding and marketing, to business leaders, to geopolitical leaders, social sector, and so on.
Right. Okay. Let's start with Guardian itself. So why did you decided to start Guardian, and why did it grow into the second biggest pharmacy in India?
Well, after my corporate career of 25 years, I just wanted to be an entrepreneur, which I decided to become. And there was a big need in India to be able to find a way to get organized retail in the pharmacy business, something that you see in the US or in the Western world. But US is a case in point of these very, very large pharmacy companies. India is a huge market, 1.4 billion people. And I thought that was the time to be able to make a beginning. So that's how I said, let me try and organize a market that is still characterized with a very large number of mom and pop shops. And that's how it started, and that's how it grew.
And it became a chain? Was it that
Yes.
people could
We had
open...
250 stores.
Yes. And was it all under your ownership, or people
all
could
company-owned
start...
stores. No,
Okay.
all company-owned stores, no franchisees.
Okay. And who were the managers of each stores? How did you pick them up to make sure that they would grow the pharmacy into something decent?
They were all employees of the company, and therefore, they started young, and then they grew with the company, built it. They started from people on the shop floor in the store to becoming store managers, to regional managers, and so on. So they were all company-owned employees and company-owned stores.
And tell us about the history of pharmacies, because I studied a pharmacy chain here in Mexico called Similares and Simi, it's called, and I believe they have 1,000 plus stores here. They started in the 90s, and it feels to me like in the 90s or even the 80s, the pharmacy concept was somewhat new. You could get your drugs there. And you could also get everything at the same time. It was sort of a convenience store. So did you start it at the right time? And yeah, like why did it grow so fast? Because yeah, I still cannot fathom how you grew so fast.
So well, the thing is fairly straightforward, Charles. 1.4 billion people, 750,000 small pharmacies, total market in excess of $45 billion, growing at 18%. The Indian consumer in 2003 was ready to make a change. Today, India is one of the biggest markets with the fifth largest economy in the world. And therefore, with a young group of consumers who were aspirational, they wanted to see stores that looked and felt like what they would see anywhere in the world. which is why we had walk-in stores, we had fast-moving consumer goods, we had a whole lot of nutrition supplements. We brought GNC from the US to India. They were part of all our stores. And the only thing that was behind a counter were the medicines, which nowhere in the world can consumers go and pick their own, where a pharmacist was available. Because the concept was new, because the concept was something that appealed to the consumers, that was the reason the chain grew so rapidly and so quickly.
Right. So being there at the right time, I guess. And
Yep.
if you started in 2003 in India, that is probably the equivalent of the 1970 or 60 landscape in the US and Canada.
Probably.
So it's like at that time that pharmacy started in there or started being popular. So pretty interesting. Then you sold your shares in 2016.
I did. I exited in 2016.
Was that life-changing?
Well, from one perspective, yes, because I had, stopped. I sold the company that I was involved with and I created from scratch from a single store. But on the other hand, the way I am, I just felt that once I have achieved something and I want to get out of it, I just keep looking ahead and not keep looking back with any kind of regret. So it was fantastic while it lasted. I had a great bunch of colleagues, but once it was time to exit, it was exit and therefore no looking back.
And then you started Equation Coaching, and a year later the brand called you. Why did you decided to go into those fields and not another brick and mortar store?
Equation Coaching is a coach. So, it's I do coach large company CEOs, as a coach, and I'm a qualified certified coach. And that I continue to do. The brand called You is actually a podcast platform, and the name comes from one of my books, which is a book, very, very successful book on personal branding. And my whole logic for starting the brand called You was very simple. When I was 22 years old in 1979, I was always looking for books of leaders from around the world, and very few books were available. Today, thousands of books are available, but the young don't read books. They get all their knowledge from podcasts and a whole lot of other mediums. So I said, therefore, let me start conversations with people. And that is how it grew. And today, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are the largest in the world. And we get about 150,000 views and listens every day. And the numbers are growing. So it is something which a lot of young people want to listen to. What is also very interesting for your viewers and listeners is that 74% of my viewers and listeners are under 34. 62% are in India, 29% in the US, and the balance spread all over the world. So it is a very diversified group of people who are listening to us. And we are now exploring possibilities of translating our English podcast, and we've got over 65,000 minutes of content into multiple languages so that the market reach can get bigger and bigger.
Tell me a bit more about the Indian market. Do people also buy higher ticket products from you than just like $10 books? Are people ready to invest more in themselves and into growth?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you would be aware that education is something that Indians spend a lot of time and money on, and every parent's dream is to be able to get better and better education for their child. And most parents will if I can use the term, sell whatever family jewels they may have to make sure that their children get an education which is comparable to the best in the world. So a lot of money is spent by parents on education of children. And therefore, while we may not have, and that's also growing, we may not have too much conspicuous consumption because Indians tend to save a lot. But as far as education is concerned, as far as learning is concerned, a lot of money gets spent.
I can see that. Your entrepreneurial career, you faced many failures. How do you survive from that?
Well, I think the way I look at failures is basically a way to learn. Anyone who tells me, have you failed in life? And I said, well, have I failed? My goodness, I have a whole book written on failure. So therefore, there are, all kinds of times when you fail. There are times, when you learn from it. And I have a very interesting line, which is that, um, it's to keep it, to err is human, to make an error is human. But when the eraser wears out ahead of the pencil, then you're overdoing it. So therefore, failure will keep happening. You learn from your failures, but the cardinal principle is do not repeat your failures. And that's something that I have lived by.
Right. And with the brand called You, you have multiple hosts, you have multiple master classes, you have multiple categories and industry segments. So how do you decide which one is right? Is it an experimental mindset, and then you compute the data, you analyze, and you double down on what works and eliminate what doesn't?
No, I mean, I normally have about 50 to 75 people where bookings have already been done. So I'm fully booked right up to end of November. And I normally record 10 to 12 podcasts every week. So therefore, I am a little selective on which category I want people in. I have 21 different categories on my website, the brand called You, which is tbcy.in. I keep looking at different people, they keep writing in, and based on whatever areas that I think I want to be able to add to my knowledge base on my website, I keep accepting people's requests.
It's all inbound. You don't do any outbound?
What does that mean? Please clarify.
Means to outreach to people to get them on the podcast via just getting requests from them on the website.
I do reach out to a few, but now, because the numbers have got fairly large, people are writing to me from all over the world. And the guests who have been on our podcast, they also keep referring because they've had a good experience, and therefore they say, well, we had a great conversation with you, so we want to refer 2 or 3 of our friends.
Right.
So that's how the numbers are growing.
Yeah, I get that too. What do you attribute that growth to? Were you again at the right place at the right time, or was it a period of the pod in which it was really slow and things weren't growing much?
Charles, right place at the right time is only one factor that you look at. But for anything to succeed, you have to be persistent, you have to be consistent. And if you are persistent and consistent all the time, you will find that people will be able to, start responding. I have met many people who say that, oh, we wait for, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. India time, 6 days a week to see what is the new podcast, because we release 2 episodes every day, 6 days a week.
For how long did you do that and didn't see any results and were just heads down working and believing in your vision?
I would say it's been ramping up. So, with the first season, which was, I think, 250 odd episodes, had lower visibility. By the time we started getting to second, third, fourth, we started understanding our podcasts better. We started understanding our guests better. But most importantly, we started to understand our viewers and listeners better. And that, I think, is where the key is.
Right. And I see many subjects here. A lot of people would say to focus on one thing. I'm more of a generalist in which I take data from one science and apply it to another. I don't think there's enough people doing that. What do you gain from talking from AI to private equity to wellness and everything in between?
Well, see, I've been very fortunate because I have worked in multiple segments all my life, from tobacco to hotels, to international business, to aerospace, to vaccines, healthcare. Because I've had the opportunity to work in so many different sectors, I my conversation with so many different people enrich me personally. Every conversation, I learn something new. Plus, as I mentioned, I'm creating a massive digital, or a digital public library, which will have access for what I call knowledge, experience, and wisdom, which is the positioning statement of the brand called You, and that it can be accessed by people from all over the world.
Right. And then the masterclass, it's if people want to take it to a next level. So tell us about that concept there.
So the masterclass is really uh, conversations based on several of my books. And people do write into me. I've got a master class on retirement. I've got a master class for startups, and that's because I have a very active blog which I write about. I have a very, very active speaking engagement circuit that I speak to people, and therefore, for me on my website, the brand called You, my master classes are not commercial. But many people write into me, many people speak to me and say that, can you guide us or can you mentor us or something? And I'm happy to do that.
Right. And where do you make most of your money nowadays? Is it on the books? Is it on consulting / coaching?
Well, I think God's been very kind. I mean, I'm 67 now. I'm not, looking at making more money. I think we got more than what we need. But I do make money in coaching. I do make money in selling my books. But as I said, at a certain stage in life, money is not the only driver.
Yeah, it is not if you already have it and you've already tasted these fruits for sure. Retirement is an interesting concept to me. I will read your book, but retirement doesn't seem to be scalable to me. It's like oh, I'll be happy when I'll have my Ferrari. I'll be happy when I'll have the wife, the house, and the retirement. What is your advice on retirement, quote unquote? And do you feel it's still a valid concept vs just having a nice relationship with work and improving 1% on a daily basis?
So no, so retirement is a very misunderstood word. I would say that given today's healthcare, most of us will live till we are 90 years old, 95 years old. When you're working for someone else, after 30 years, 35 years, there is a need for you, for your employer to say, okay, now time for you to move on and do something different, because they need younger people in the same jobs that you have been looking at. So therefore, from my perspective, what is very important is that you need to be able to rethink your whole life. You need to look at a second innings. You need to be able to do things that you were not able to do when you were employed in the yoke, so to speak, with your current employer. It doesn't mean putting your feet up in a chair and, waiting for the sun to rise and the sun to set. That I think is one of the, classical ways of making sure that you're going to be leaving the world very, very early if you're really not doing anything, because the old statement of an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So, you'll get unwell, you'll have all kinds of other challenges if you've got nothing to do. So it's just repositioning your own interests at different stages of life.
Looking back at your life, do you feel that you've accomplished everything that you've set out to?
I would say, if I was to live a life like this again, I would probably live it exactly the same. I wouldn't change too much. I think I've got a lot of achieved a lot. I've also been fortunate to have failed many times and learned from my failures. I've got a phenomenal family, great sons, and of course a lovely granddaughter. So I'm happy. I don't have any regrets at all.
Right. And it seems that you've found a way to manage your stress level as well. From what I've
Absolutely.
read about you, nowadays it seems that the stress levels keep on increasing. People are left and right, they're separate. I feel that COVID had a huge impact on this. What would you advise folks in terms of stress to get these levels under control?
Well, I would say, see, stress is something which is entirely inside each one of us. And each one of us has our own ability to manage our stress. When you start thinking about it rationally, that why am I getting stressed? Pick up a piece of paper, write down what stresses you, and you will have the answer on how to manage the stress. Uh, People do meditation, people do yoga, people go for a run to clear their head. Um, People, are not able to sleep. I tell people, when the moment my head hits my pillow, I'm out like a light, and I'm out and I sleep deep sleep for good 6.5 hours every night. So, I think stress is something in each one's mind, and it's up to us to be able to confront it, to be able to manage it, because remember that every time one gets stressed, the only one who's harming oneself is you yourself. The rest of the world does not have the time to care about anyone else. Unless of course you're now getting into a situation where you have to go and take medical help, in which case you probably have someone supporting you. But in today's day and age, most of the time I have seen people are very stressed because what have I got and the others, what has someone else got that I don't have? That is the reason for stress. Why is someone doing better than I am doing? That is the reason for stress. What is someone else thinking of me? That is a reason for stress. These are all things that I think we can manage ourselves.
I agree. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom, Ashu. Where can people find out more about you?
You can have a look at my website. You can write to me at gargashutosh@gmail.com. Send me an email if you have anything you want to talk to me about, and I'd be happy to respond to you. But thank you, Charles. It was a pleasure speaking to you.